Last week I ranked all the Nintendo Game Boy launch titles, and there's a few all-time classics in it, but now this week let's talk about its rival, the Sega Game Gear, and the 6 games that launched with the North American Game Gear in the early 1990s. First up is Super Monaco GP, the F1 racing game that featured multiple different tracks and was seen on a variety of different Sega consoles. This game features a lot of really fast-paced racing as you have a lot of really quick turns. If you don't press left or right on the D-pad at the right moment, you're going to immediately crash into the wall, slow down to a halt, or of course let your rivals end up getting back ahead of you. Overall, there is some fun to be had, but honestly, I always preferred F1 Racer on the Nintendo Game Boy compared to Super Monaco GP. G-Lock Air Battle, based on Sega's arcade game, is a plane combat game where you have a lot of missions to select from, and you can actually do them in what order you want to, and they involve stuff like destroying a certain number of enemy planes, battleships, or forts. You also have a limited number of supplies and have to manage your fuel. You can buy upgrades, and the action is pretty fast-paced and can be difficult at times, especially as you make it farther into the game. Overall, I was never really into a lot of the air combat games when I was a kid, so when I ended up having it on this Game Gear, I didn't really play it all that much, but playing it now, G-Lock Air Battle is a pretty fun game. The Wonder Boy series in general is a very interesting and confusing one as far as all the releases go, and the Sega Game Gear version of Wonder Boy, known as Revenge of Draken, at least here in North America, where it's still known as Wonder Boy in Europe and Japan. I still don't know why they ended up changing the name, but basically it's a port of the arcade game from 1986. In it, you're playing as Wonder Boy, going from level to level, picking up different supplies from eggs, and of course trying not to get hit. You also have to worry about your stamina meter and picking up fruit, and the game even has a skateboard that you'll be able to ride as a power-up until you end up getting hit or fall into a pit because it can be difficult to control. I love Adventure Island on the NES, which Wonder Boy was ported over to the NES and changed into that. But overall, this is still a really fun version of the game, though it is sometimes a little bit too compact to see everything that's coming ahead. A really fun game that was released only in Japan for the Master System, but here in North America for the Game Gear, is Psychic World. Here you're playing as a female protagonist and battling level after level. There's different weapons that you'll be able to pick up, multiple different areas to each stage with some confusing maze-like elements overall, and some pretty well-paced action, and I absolutely love the soundtrack. Unfortunately, this was one game that I didn't have growing up, so I only got to experience much later. But in the end, Psychic World is one of my favorite Game Gear games. With stuff like handheld gaming, you want games that are easily accessible, that you can pick up and play at a moment's notice, and puzzle games usually work really well for that. And Sega had Columns on the Sega Game Gear. While it's of course released in arcades and for other Sega systems, the version on the Game Gear is a little bit different, and actually is pretty fun. You have two different modes, Original and Flash, with Flash having a shining gem at the bottom of the screen, and you had to work your way down in order to actually connect with that gem and finish it off in order to complete the level, or of course the Original mode where you're just stacking jewels, making matches, and of course trying to see how high of a score you can end up getting. This is actually the version of Columns I played the most growing up, and I absolutely still love this game today, and regularly go back to it. The only major difference between the North American and Japanese releases for the Sega Game Gear was the inclusion of Pango in the starting lineup for the Game Gear in Japan. It's a port of the arcade classic and is pretty well done here on the Sega Game Gear. It's one of those ones I didn't get a chance to play a whole lot, as I actually didn't know this version in particular existed, but I always have fun playing the Pango arcade game, and if I ever run into a cabinet, I immediately go to it. Overall, if you want some fast-paced penguin action, you can't really go wrong with Pango. While its Sega Genesis counterpart may get a lot more love, Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse on the Master System and the Game Gear is still a really fun overall platformer. The levels, while some of them are the same themes, some of them are completely different, and designs are completely overhauled here. If you enjoyed Castle of Illusion on the Genesis and have never checked out its handheld counterpart, this is an absolutely great platformer with some good music and overall fun action. While it may not be as fondly remembered as many other classic platformers, Castle of Illusion is one of my all-time favorites. So there you have it, the launch lineup for the Sega Game Gear here in North America. Europe, unfortunately, only got 3 of the games mentioned on this list in its launch lineup, so it wasn't quite as good. And while it may not be as popular or sold as much as the Game Boy, I love the Game Gear. Sure, it was a struggle to find batteries or be able to plug it into a wall, but the backlight, the colorization, and just so many great games made me fall in love with it. And since a lot of the games were also on the Master System, which is an argument against, I guess, the Game Gear itself, I didn't grow up with the Master System, so a lot of those great games I got to experience first on my Game Gear. If you're wondering, I'm not going to be doing a launch lineup video for the Sega Master System, as I've gotten a lot of questions about that, just because there was only 2 games available for the Master System when it ended up coming out. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up this ranking video. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.